Lisa Grimshaw called me when, after Stephen was born, and I turned her down. She was in jail awaiting trial. And then she called me after, when I was pregnant with Peter, and I turned her down. And she waited. Here was the story. She had been beaten by her husband, by boyfriends before her, by her father. And she had left this particular husband. But unlike with usual battered women, where a woman has hard time leaving, she actually had left. But he kept on coming back, and he kept on appearing, and he would break in through the window, and he would break down the door. So she never felt safe anywhere. They had a son together, and she had to interact with him. And on the evening of the murder, she went to pick up her son, and there was a fight over the son, and she thought that he had gotten her keys. She grabbed her son and ran back to the apartment. And she spent the evening waiting for him to break in, as he had done countless times before. And instead, by a couple of hours, she's waiting, literally trembling, waiting for him to come in. A man that she'd been dating, not a very nice man, but a man that she'd been dating, comes in with a friend of his, and she tells him the story, and he says, "We'll just do it." It was not at all clear what it meant. And they went to pick up the husband, and he was beaten to death by these other guys while she was there. It was a difficult battered women syndrome claim. The battered women syndrome had never been introduced in Massachusetts at all before then. And it was a claim that for women who are beaten, who expect violence at every turn, self-defense meant something different than it did in the usual case. In other words, in the usual case, the usual self-defense is usually defined as in male terms, which is, are you facing threat of bodily injury? Have you used all resources to avoid it? And usually a man comes to that kind of situation very different than a woman. A man would regard a threat of imminent bodily injury different. He would also have different sense of what he can do to escape than a woman would. And so battered woman syndrome was one way of suggesting, was a syndrome that women, much like returning soldiers from Vietnam would have, where they would have a different view of what the danger was and what the alternatives were based on what they had been through. And by that point, in other parts of the country, there was an effort to use this defense to explain why they did what they did. And I wanted to use it in Lisa Grimshaw's case. It was not easy, because there had been a period of time between the last beating and the time of the murder. But it seemed to me that that was for the jury to decide. Let the jury hear what her makeup was, let them understand what she had gone through, and then they can decide whether it was first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter, or an acquittal. It was for them to decide, and luckily the judge let me use that defense. It was a stunning defense, because the prosecutor, in fact, challenged whether she had been beaten at all, which was a very big mistake. So we were able to show to the jury, describe to the jury, getting out of her car with a friend of hers after they had separated, and him walking up to her and punching her in the face, as if he's something he could do with impunity. Just, he could do that. Or the story of him breaking through a window and punching her, and she winds up losing her teeth. We had doctors' records, we had witnesses, and we had an expert who'd talk about what's the impact of this kind of life on your perceptions. We went through that. The result was a manslaughter conviction, not first-degree murder, which I regarded as a victory. But then the judge gave her the maximum, which was outrageous. no one, the man who kills his wife after he finds out that she has been sleeping with someone else didn't get 20 years.
No.
Somehow it was clear that the values that I'd been struggling against all my life were now coming to play in this courtroom. He gave her 20 years. She ultimately gets out with less than that because there had been a movement at this point at Framingham. There were numbers of women who were in because of killing their abusive
Yes.
husbands or lovers, and she essentially, it's a little bit more detailed than that, got out got early parole as a result of that.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.